Good evening, everybody. This is Scott Morganroth here for the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, welcoming Ryan Skolrud for another edition of Fantasy Football. Ryan, we're back with some good stuff.
Yeah, it's good to be back with you for another show.
Looking forward to it. Lots to get to, some predictions, and see if we can find some fans out there that'll find some winners off of what our information is about. And we'll start with a bird called the Cardinals. The running backs for the Cardinals and the 49ers, you say, are really looking thin for a Thursday night football, right, Ryan?
Yeah, there's a lot of injuries going into just the Thursday night football game. If you look at the Cardinals, we've known about, kind of the issues with David Johnson, and we've talked about, bringing in Chase Edmonds and how he has been doing in terms of the running game. That being said, Edmonds is now dealing with a hamstring strain, is going to miss multiple weeks. David Johnson, we talked about last week how he was questionable to even play Thursday night football after missing Sunday. As of right now, they have him as a game-time decision. So now you're down most likely your top two running backs. They just traded for Kenyon Drake, who's only been in the offense now for 2 to 3 days after getting traded. So Kenyon Drake is not the best option. And then you have Zach Zenner and Alfred Morris, who have only been with the team a week and a half, and they're just kind of stopgap. And really, if you think about it, Kenny Drake's really kind of a stopgap for the most part as well. So there aren't really any good fantasy options for the Cardinals in terms of running backs. And then you look at what's going on with the 49ers. Matt Breida and Raheem Mostert are both did not practice. One dealing with an ankle, and the other, I believe, with a hamstring. It's a quad injury. Ankle and a quad injury. And then you've got Jeff Wilson, who dealt with the stinger on Sunday, and he's questionable for Thursday night also. So Tevin Coleman is the only healthy running back as of right now for the 49ers. So really you have a patchwork for the Cardinals and one healthy guy for the 49ers.
Okay, very good. All right, Walt, you said James Conner did not practice today, and therefore everybody's pointing toward Jalen Samuel getting the start on Sunday after he was a full participant in practice.
Yeah, I talked about this on my podcast that Conner wasn't panicking. As of right now, he was still kind of a game time decision in terms of this weekend. I think that he was being overly optimistic, just like he was last year when he got injured with the ankle towards the end of the season. He wasn't, he was saying, I should be ready soon. I should be ready soon, and he kept just not practicing. And so I think right now, they held out Jalen Samuel out of the Miami game just to make sure that he was plenty rested up. I think they figured that they were going to win the game against Miami. I don't think they considered, they thought about, figured it would be as close as it was, especially after the first quarter. That being said, they finally were able to do what they knew they could, pulled out the win. It paid off resting Samuel. So Jalen Samuel got in a full practice today, so he is most likely going to be the starter. I think they probably rest James Conner. And then I believe Benny Snell is also dealing with an injury, a leg injury of some kind. So really it's down to Jalen Samuel and whoever they have after, fourth on the depth chart there. So really Samuel should be in for a big workload. If you look about, we talked about this on the Sports Exchange yesterday, that he should be in for a massive workload. He's really good at catching the ball out of the backfield. He runs very well. Averaged 100 yards a game. In the 3 starts that he had when Conner was out in 2018. So he should be in for a decent workload coming up this weekend.
Okay. Otherwise, if I were the Steelers, if they can't get it straight on in their running game, they better just throw the ball a lot. I mean,
that's
a lot.
Usually the case.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll go to O.J. Howard. You say he's still not practicing, therefore giving Cameron Brate better streaming value for his Week 9 matchup against your hometown Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, so here's the deal. O.J. Howard has not been all that healthy as of right now. Obviously, he's dealing with multiple issues. The least, the most of which is the fact that in Bruce Arians' offense, for the most part, they don't really use tight ends. It's really it's all about the wide receivers, and they've got two wide receivers that, in fantasy terms, are both in the top 5 of fantasy production. So you've got you've got a Seattle defense that it does pretty well against wide receivers. They give up only the 22nd most, so they're in the bottom 11 teams in terms of amount of fantasy points given up to the wide receivers. Same thing with the running backs, although Tampa Bay really doesn't have a running game other than crossover passes over the middle to Chris Godwin. They do give up a fair amount of points to the quarterback, but it's the tight end that's really where they bleed points, giving up 10 points a game, fantasy points a game to the tight end position. And I think that could provide, obviously, a little bit of extra workload for Chris Godwin, who runs things out of the slot. And a lot of the times the tight end will run from the slot or obviously from just off the end of the line. But with Cameron Brate, he's had a good rapport with Jameis Winston going back 3 years. And he just hasn't been as involved in the offense over the last couple of years. And if O.J. Howard is out, I think that due to the matchup, it could provide a decent amount of fantasy points out of Cameron Brate for this week's matchup against the Seahawks. Again, they're very weak against tight ends in fantasy. So Brate, I think, is a possible streaming option and also a good value play in terms of DFS lineups.
All right, let's go on to Brandon Cooks. You say he's still dealing with concussion, seeing a specialist. Josh Reynolds is a solid wide receiver streaming option in his absence.
Yeah, so here's what's going on with Brandon Cooks is that he is seeing a specialist. Sean McVay on a conference call with reporters said that Cooks was being placed in a concussion protocol for the second time in a month. McVay says he's quickly asymptomatic. They want to find out more what's going on with Brandon Cooks. He's taken some hard hits to the head. One of them was actually in the Thursday night football game against Seattle in week 5 or I think it was week 5 or 6, where he got taken down, made a phenomenal catch, but in the midst of getting tackled, really got his head slammed against the ground, and that was his first one. And then he got another one this last week. So really, with him seeing a specialist, they're going to leave him out as long as possible. Luckily, they have Josh Reynolds, who has been a solid fantasy contributor in terms of flex play, especially in deeper leagues. If you're in a 12 to 16 team league, Josh Reynolds should be owned as a wide receiver with Brandon Cooks out. Last season, the Rams ran 3 wide receiver sets on 96% of their snaps. They are still up close to that this year. I want to say they're still in the 90%. And so they do that by far more than anyone else. That means that Josh Reynolds is going to be on the field. He had a couple of very good games last year filling in for Cooper Kupp when he went on IR with his ACL injury. And so I think that his ability to not only play in the slot but also outside, I think that Reynolds could provide decent flex value for however long Brandon Cooks is gone in this offense. Again, for probably more likely for a 12 to 16 or 12 or larger, 12-team or larger type of league, I think that he could provide flex value as long as Brandon Cooks is out.
All right, well, this is a part of the program where we're going to start talking about some key games. I know how much we both don't like Thursday games, so I'm sitting David Johnson. I'm not comfortable with him at all, and I think for me, from a peace of mind, I'd like to think I have better options, but so let's talk about the 49ers and the Cardinals. I actually want to know from you, will the San Francisco 49ers defense be tested, or do you think that Arizona doesn't have enough with this 49ers defense playing as well as it is?
This Cardinals offense definitely does not have enough to battle with the 49ers. The 49ers defense, the only team better than the 49ers defense is the Patriots defense. The Patriots defense, in terms of giving up fantasy points to any position, is number 1 against the quarterback, number 1 against the running back, number 1 against the wide receiver, and number 2 against tight ends. The 49ers are number 2 against quarterback, number 3 against running back, number 3 against wide receiver, and number 1 against tight end. They are they are suffocating offenses. Now, I understand both the Patriots and the 49ers, for the most part, have played against teams that have struggled and have not been very good so far this season. That being said, they're taking advantage of teams that aren't playing well. And there are teams that, aren't necessarily, that may have records close to the 49ers and the Patriots that aren't taking, their defense is not taking care of lower teams like the Patriots and the 49ers are. So the Cardinals can have a little bit of explosiveness. I still am not a believer in Murray. You've got the whole running back situation that we just covered a few minutes ago. And then it's, Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk are the main weapons in terms of receiving for the wide receivers. And they really don't have a tight end really worth anything in terms of fantasy value. This is going to be all 49ers. I think that the Cardinals, who give up the most fantasy points per week to quarterbacks and to tight ends, this is going to be a huge game for George Kittle. I think he is my number one tight end for this week.
So, got to ask you for a prediction. I'll give you mine.
I think the 49ers win this. Oh, gosh. I'm going to say they may take off the gas pedal a little bit. It is a Thursday night football game. So I'll say 30-10.
Okay, 30-10. I actually thought 31-7.
Well, we're both pretty close there.
Yeah, I think we are. All right, well, on to a game that I was hoping to be there, but neck surgery had a lot to say about that. The Houston Texans are at the Jacksonville Jaguars / Wembley Stadium overseas in London. Will the London Bridge be falling down on the Houston Texans, knowing that J.J. Watt won't be there? And will Leonard Fournette run wild against that J.J. Wattless defense?
Well, the Texans actually are pretty good against, in terms of giving up fantasy points to the wide receiver or to the running back and to tight ends. They do a very good job of covering those two positions. Where they don't, their defensive secondary is terrible, stopping quarterbacks and stopping wide receivers. The Jaguars historically have played very well in their London games compared to everyone else who has to play their games over the pond. The Jaguars have had some very shocking wins playing over in London. And so while I understand it's not Blake Bortles, it's Gardner Minshew, but Minshew's a much better quarterback than Bortles is. I think that this could be a very good game for the Jaguars in terms of fantasy production for Minshew and from Chark. I understand Chark is dealing with a little bit of an injury. Westbrook, I believe, is healthy. And you've got Chris Conley, who has had a very good couple of games the last couple of weeks. So I think that the wide receivers are in for a good game. As far as the Texans go, the Jaguars defense is very solid all around. They don't have any position that they're really, really bad at covering in terms of giving up fantasy points. That being said, Watson is the number one or number two quarterback in terms of total fantasy points so far this year. They don't have much in terms of a running game. So really it's Watson throwing to Hopkins. And for right now, Kenny Stills, DeAndre Carter, and whichever tight end he decides to throw to this week, whether it be Atkins or Fells. So I still think even with the defense playing pretty well for the Jaguars, I still think the Texans put up points. I think that the Texans can come away with the win here. That being said, I think this is going to be a close game. It could be a decent offensive explosion for both teams. So,
will you give me a score? You got to give scores when we do it on Wednesday night.
All right, so let's do 24-28 Texans. So 28-24 Texans.
28-24. Okay. Yeah, I think I would probably I'm going to go with the Jaguars winning this one 24-17.
All right.
Only because they seem to have the London drill down, where most teams that go overseas don't. They can. I believe they're leaving on Thursday, so for them, seeing the tourist attractions may be all well and good for a day or so, but they have it down pat. So we'll see. All right, and a game here, I had a chance to see them a week ago, but now maybe New York Jets' second appearance in the Sunshine State will be a lot better than last week's one. They play the Miami Dolphins. Will Le'Veon Bell have a breakout game?